Penguin Random House Audio presents Until August, a novel by Gabriel García Márquez, translated from the Spanish by Anne MacLean, with a preface written by Rodrigo and Gonzalo Garcia Barcha, read by Rodrigo Garcia Barcha. An editor's note written and read by Cristobal Pera. Read for you by Catalina Sandino Moreno.
Preface. The memory loss our father suffered in his final years, as most people will find easy to imagine, was extremely tough on all of us. But in particular, the way that loss diminished his ability to continue to write with his customary rigor was a source of desperate frustration for him. He told us once with the clarity and eloquence of the great writer he was, "Memory is at once my source material and my tool. Without it, there's nothing." Until August was the fruit of one last effort to carry on creating against all odds. The process was a race between his artistic perfectionism and his vanishing mental faculties. The lengthy back and forth of the many versions of the text is described in detail, much better than we could, by our friend Cristobal Pera in his editor's note for the Spanish edition. At the time, all we knew was Gabo's final judgment. This book doesn't work. It must be destroyed. We did not destroy it, but we did set it aside in the hope that time would decide what to do with it. Reading it again almost 10 years after his death, we discovered that the text contained a great many wonderful achievements. It is not, of course, as polished as his greatest books. It has a few rough patches and contradictions, but nothing that impedes enjoyment of the most outstanding aspects of Gabo's work. His capacity for invention, his poetic use of language, his captivating storytelling, his understanding of humankind, and his affection for our experiences and misadventures, especially when it comes to love. Love, possibly the main subject of his entire oeuvre. Judging the book to be much better than we remembered it, another possibility occurred to us, that the fading faculties that kept him from finishing the book also kept him from realizing how good it was. In an act of betrayal, we decided to put his readers' pleasure ahead of all other considerations. If they are delighted, it's possible Gabo might forgive us. In that, we trust. Rodrigo and Gonzalo Garcia Barcha.
1. She returned to the island on Friday, August 16th, on the 3:00 ferry. She was wearing jeans, a plaid shirt, plain flat shoes without socks, carrying a satin parasol and a handbag, and her only luggage was a beach bag. In the row of taxis at the dock, she went straight to an old model corroded by the sea air. The driver welcomed her warmly and took her jolting across the destitute village, with its mud-walled shacks, palm-thatched roofs, and streets of burning sand beside a sea in flames. He had to swerve around undaunted pigs and naked children pretending to be toreadors. On the outskirts of the village, he drove down an avenue of royal palms where the beaches and the tourist hotels were, between the open sea and a lagoon inhabited by blue herons. At last, he stopped outside the oldest, most dilapidated hotel. The concierge was waiting for her, with a registration card ready to sign and the keys to the only room on the second floor that overlooked the lagoon. She climbed the stairs in 4 strides and entered the shabby room that smelled of recent fumigation and was almost entirely occupied by an enormous double bed. She took a kidskin toiletry case out of her bag and a book with uncut pages that she put on the nightstand with an ivory paper knife marking her place. She took out a pink silk nightgown and tucked it under the pillow. She also took out a silk scarf printed with tropical birds, a short-sleeved white shirt, and a pair of very worn tennis shoes. and carried them into the bathroom. Before getting dressed, she took off her wedding ring and the men's watch she wore on her right wrist, put them on the shelf above the sink, and washed her face quickly to get rid of the dust from the journey, scare away the siesta time fatigue. After she finished drying off, she looked in the mirror and appraised her breasts, still round and high in spite of 2 pregnancies. She stretched her cheeks back with the heels of her hands to remind herself what she'd looked like when young. She ignored the wrinkles on her neck, as there was nothing she could do about them now, and checked her perfect teeth, which she'd brushed after lunch on board the ferry. She rolled deodorant onto her smooth-shaven underarms and put on the fresh cotton shirt with the initials A and B embroidered on the pocket. She brushed her straight black hair, which fell to her shoulders, and tied it up in a ponytail with a bird print scarf. To complete her look, she rubbed a little Vaseline on her lips, moistened her fingertips with her tongue, and smoothed down her eyebrows, dabbed a drop of Maderas de Oriente behind each ear, and at last confronted her autumnal motherly face in the mirror. Her skin, without a trace of cosmetics, had the color and texture of molasses, and her topaz eyes were beautiful with their dark Portuguese lids. She scrutinized herself thoroughly, judged herself without pity, and found that she looked almost as good as she felt. Only when she put her ring and watch back on did she notice how late she was. It was 6 minutes to 4, but she allowed herself a moment of nostalgia to contemplate the herons that glided in stillness over the steamy torpor of the lagoon. The taxi was waiting for her beneath the banana thatch at the entrance. Without needing instructions, he drove down the palm-lined avenue to a gap between the hotels, where the street market was, and pulled up to a flower stall. A large black woman snoozing in a beach chair was startled awake by the horn, recognized the woman in the back seat of the car, and laughing and chatting, handed her an already prepared bouquet of gladioli. A few blocks ahead, the taxi turned up a barely passable track that climbed along a ridge of sharp stones. Through air crystallized by the heat, she could see the wide-open Caribbean, the yachts lined up beside the tourists' dock, the 4 o'clock ferry on its way back to the city. At the top of the hill was a poorest cemetery. She pushed open the rusty gate without straining and carried the bouquet down the path between burial mounds overgrown with weeds. In the center, there was a ceiba tree with huge branches, from which she took her bearings to find her mother's grave. The sharp stones hurt her feet through the hot rubber soles of her shoes, and the harsh sun filtered through the satin of her parasol. An iguana emerged from the underbrush, stopped short in front of her, stared for an instant, then scampered away. She pulled a gardening glove out of her pocket, put it on, and had to clean 3 gravestones before she recognized the pale marble with her mother's name and the date of her death, 8 years earlier. She had repeated this trip every August 16th, at the same time, with the same taxi and the same florist, under the fiery sun of that destitute cemetery, to place a bouquet of fresh gladioli on her mother's grave. After that moment, she had nothing to do until 9 the next morning, when the first ferry went back to the mainland. Her name was Ana Magdalena Bach. For 27 of her 46 years, she had been in a well-matched marriage with a man she loved and who loved her, and whom she married before finishing her arts and letters degree, still a virgin and without any previous relationships. Her mother had been a famous Montessori teacher who, in spite of her talents, never in her entire life wanted to be anything more. And Magdalena inherited from her the splendor of her golden eyes,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?